My brother and I do not get on. When we were younger, he'd go out of his way to make my life a living hell. To my parents' credit, they did tell him off for it when they caught him, but they both worked long hours and didn't have the energy to deal with our arguments. This continued into adulthood. He was salty that he failed his college course the first time around. There was a bad argument in our family a while ago, and it all started because I refused to decorate my brother's living room. I won't go into too much detail, but he wanted a pretty hefty discount. I said no, and he threw a tantrum. Instead of being a grown-up and talking to me, he decided to hook up with my toxic ex-girlfriend and the mother of my child. I can't go into a lot of detail about what she was like, but she was not a nice person. She never really bonded with our son when he was born, and I was left to do everything by myself. She eventually walked out on us and refused to have any contact with our son. She'll post on Facebook now and then about her beautiful baby boy to get sympathy votes, but that's about it. I have been a single dad for almost 3 years now, and I absolutely adore my son, but it hurts to think that one day he might question why his mom didn't want anything to do with him. How am I supposed to explain that to him? Anyway, it bothered me when my brother told me they'd hooked up together. It hurt even more when he started dating her. It had taken me so long to get over what she did to me and my child, and now my own brother was bringing her back into my life. Yesterday we had a family video call. Parents are high risk and we're not taking any chances. When my brother decided to announce that he and my ex were expecting, I just froze. I didn't know what to do or think. I could feel myself starting to cry a little bit, and it got a bit harder to breathe. Eventually, I decided to just congratulate them and then made up some lie about needing to put my son down for a nap and left. I received a bunch of messages from my brother and his GF telling me that I stole their thunder. After I left, my parents and some other family members started worrying if I was okay, and not really focusing on their news. My uncle told me that I should have just been a man and stuck it out instead of making excuses to get out of it. After all, it was expected that our kids would be raised around each other. I feel like maybe I shouldn't have left the call, but at the same time it would have been worse if I'd stayed and had a full-blown panic attack in front of everyone. Some of the family members are split and have argued that I won't be able to avoid my brother and his family forever, but others believe I was in the right to leave that situation. I don't know what to think. My parents aren't happy, but they don't have the energy to deal with all the hassle my brother would cause. They actually cut him off for a little while when he started dating my ex, but he phoned them constantly and, again, can't go into much detail, but he said he'd do something not so good. They keep him at arm's length, but I have told them not to cut contact because of me. If they want to cut contact on their own accord, then that's fine, but I do not want to be the reason that they have to deal with his tantrums. The rest of the family, for the most part, weren't happy about it but accepted it, or pretended to. When they started getting a bit more serious, my uncle, who told me to be a man, thought it was funny. That's just the kind of person he is. Not for my sake, but for the sake of my son. I don't want to put him through all that. Back in November 2018, I was arrested at work in front of my boss and coworkers. It was the most humiliating thing I've ever experienced. I later learned at the police station that I was being charged with multiple felonies. This came as a huge surprise. Luckily, I was able to keep my wits and lawyer up instead of speaking with the detective. For $13,000, which completely wiped my savings, I was able to retain a criminal defense attorney. However, it cost me everything, and I was unable to pay my bond. This resulted in me staying in jail for a total of 54 days. At a status hearing, my attorney presented video evidence of me gassing up my car 3 hours away from where the crimes took place, and I ended up having all my charges dismissed. When I finally got out, I learned that I had lost my job, was in the process of being evicted, and my son was in the state's care. His mother is a heroin addict, and I haven't spoken to my own parents in nearly 15 years. They wouldn't let him go to my girlfriend because they didn't consider her family. Since my release, I've learned that I can't sue the police, and no one gives a shit that I was locked up for 54 days because the detective did poor investigation work. I've gone to the local press about this and was told that what happened to me happens quite a bit. They took down my info but never followed up. So what I did was create a website sharing my story. I also uploaded the police report and some other documents from the discovery. Literally, the only reason why I was arrested was because an eyewitness said they saw me. If the detective had done his job, he could have verified that I wasn't even in town on the day the crimes took place. This is what pisses me off the most. My life was ruined because of a lazy employee. My website is now ranked number 2 on the first page of search results when you type in my town's name. I live in a touristy town and we attract a lot of visitors over the summer. My web traffic has more than quadrupled, and apparently it's gotten someone high up's attention. I received a cease and desist letter recently, which I showed to my attorney. He said sharing my experience online isn't illegal and that everything I had stated was a fact or my own opinion, protecting me from a defamation lawsuit. Yesterday I received a visit from 2 officers and the detective who had arrested me. He apologized, stating mistakes can happen. They then talked to me about my website and asked if I could remove it. I said I would delete it on the condition that the detective leave his job and never do police work again. Suffice to say that isn't happening. After the visit I received, I'm more pissed off that the only reason the detective apologized to me was to get me to take down my website. I don't plan to, and the only one supporting this is my girlfriend. My friends think I'm being spiteful and have suggested that I just delete it. When I was a teenager, my dad bought me a classic 1972 Ford Bronco. It was my true passion, and I don't recall a memory from high school that somehow doesn't involve that truck. Plus my dad and I would spend hours and hours working on it together, and we went through that especially father/son rough patch. When I was teenager, it was always that Bronco that brought us back together. I made a huge mistake and sold the truck when I turned 19, and my dad died of a heart attack 2 months later, so while not logical, I've always felt a karmic connection between the two events. We had a baby in early February. She is our first and the light of my life. My wife is doing well, but she's back at work and she's realized that she hates all the daycares we've tried and really wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and plus she's still very hormonal from delivery. Lack of sleep and breastfeeding, so she's having a rough time and is angry a lot. I guess I need to say this. 2 weeks ago I was driving through our town's warehouse district and saw a Bronco that was pretty beat up but resembled mine. I stopped just for nostalgia's sake, and the owner came out and let me take a look inside. My dad and I had glued a wheat penny under the dash as sort of security measure, so I just sort of checked, and goddamned if it wasn't my Bronco. I asked him if he'd ever consider selling it. He said actually someone was on I-25 as we spoke from Colorado to buy it for $21,000. I freaked out and asked him if I could buy it right then and there for $23,000. He said if I could come up with the cash, yes. I had been procrastinating setting up a 529, so I had $12,000 in savings that my wife's parents had given us. I maxed out my credit card to Venmo, and my mom bought down a check for $4,000, and I drove away in my old car. It was like a dream come true. Like a literal dream come true. It needs a lot of work I can't afford right now, but it's mine. Like in my driveway, mine. Again. I can't even describe what a joy this is. My wife and her parents are furious with me. They feel I was deceptive, that a real man would have sacrificed anything and everything so my wife could go stay at home with his kids, and that's setting aside that they gave us the money for a college fund. My point is, my daughter is only 6 months old. We have 18 years to set up a college fund of her. But this Bronco means everything to me, and if I wouldn't have acted it would have been gone forever. Now it can be that same connection between me and my kids. To me it's the literal meaning of happiness. I talked with my mom and she is basically going to buy the Bronco from me in order to refill the college fund and pay off the credit card. The $4,000 will be a gift, and she's going to give me whatever I need to restore it. She's always been awesome to me, and she's rather the money be spent now than wait for me and my sister's inheritance. I didn't tell my wife that my mom bailed me out and lied and said I found a buyer for the Bronco. I'll figure out how to cross that bridge when I get there, but my wife was so relieved that I had come to your senses. I don't want to disappoint her. It's going to take all my lying skills to pull this one off over the next few years. My girlfriend and I have been dating the past 5 years, since college. After graduation, we were semi-long distance, living close enough that we alternately visited almost every weekend. in 2018 and got a job in my city, and we found a place and moved in together. Now's a good time to mention the security cameras in our house. Break-ins are unfortunately common where we live. We thus got some motion-activated cameras, one of which has a view of our kitchen, to monitor the back door. The cameras only record when there's motion so they can retain footage for a very long time. And of course knows this about a year ago, and started complaining I wasn't contributing equally to chores. I've been obsessive about chores my whole life. Growing up, not doing the dishes meant no video games for a week. When I lived with roommates, I was always the chore Nazi, making damn sure we all stuck to our chore wheel. And is just as fastidious about chores, so we just naturally alternated who did what. I'd just been brushing her remarks off, but over the last few months they've become much more aggressive. E.g. I was vacuuming and said, "Look at you finally cleaning up around here." I replied that we alternated vacuuming, to which she retorted, "No, you've vacuumed maybe twice since I moved in." Exchanges like this have been happening so frequently that I began to doubt my own recollection. Am I not as clean as I thought? Finally, she exploded at me last week. She said that having to stay home constantly over the past weeks exposed how little I do around the house, and that she didn't move in just to be my maid. Questioning my own sanity, I spent a few hours going through the entire 1.5-year archive of security camera footage, and tallied the exact number of times the kitchen cam caught each of us doing dishes. Our cleaning supplies, vacuum, mop, etc., are in the kitchen pantry, so I also tallied up how many times we grabbed cleaning stuff. To my vindication, the tally showed that we indeed split chores equally. She vacuumed / mopped 5 more times than I did. I did dishes 20 more times than she did. Given that we vacuum / mop at least once a week and do dishes at least every day, these are insignificant differences over the year and a half we've lived together. When I confronted Anne, she shrugged off her behavior as remembering things differently, but the real sin here was what I did, which she called an unforgivable violation of her privacy, akin to abusive stalking. She has broken up with me and is trying to move out, although obviously this is difficult due to current circumstances. I'm totally heartbroken, and was the love of my life, and I can't believe she destroyed our relationship like this. To make matters worse, she told many of our friends, who are mostly siding with her. They've been texting me that what I did was creepy, abusive, controlling, invasive, etc. I'm at a loss. I'm beginning to think I'm the one who's off base here.